I was pinned to the ground, handcuffs biting into my wrists, while the police officers looked at me with contempt, as if my rank of Army general and my achievements meant nothing. To them, my skin color was already a sentence. But what happened next would surprise even the most experienced. Let's start from the beginning. I was heading home after a long, exhausting day. The briefing had been not just difficult. It was one of those moments where every decision could change the future. We discussed dangerous operations, and all the responsibility fell on my shoulders. I wasn't deciding the fate of individuals, but the fate of an entire country. Black generals in the U.S. Army knew that my duties didn't end when the workday was over. Being at the top of the military hierarchy was not just an honor, but an enormous responsibility. But today, I couldn't think about briefings or missions. I just wanted to get home, take off this heavy uniform, relax in my chair, and see my family. And suddenly, like a thunderclap, the silence was shattered by the wail of sirens. I flinched. Then, glancing in the rearview mirror, I noticed flashing blue and red lights. A patrol. My first reaction was confusion. I hadn't broken any rules, hadn't sped. In those first seconds, I thought this must be a mistake. I slowed down to let them pass, but instead they sped up, getting closer to me. My heart raced. What was happening? This wasn't supposed to happen. As a general, I was used to respect. I was used to my rank and status speaking for themselves. But for some reason, I felt an odd unease at that moment. I couldn't understand why the patrol was after me, and the sense of threat slowly grew. The sirens didn't stop. In the rear-view mirror, their cars were now right on my tail, and I realized there was no escape. They clearly wanted me to pull over. I took a deep breath and slowly pulled off to the side. Everything inside me screamed that this was a misunderstanding, that I'd just explained, and they'd let me go. But something was wrong. I could feel it. 2 officers stepped out of their cars, both white, with harsh faces, and both had their hands on their weapons. I felt a cold fear rising inside me. This wasn't a routine check. One of them, tall and blonde, shouted, not even giving me a chance to step out of the car on my own. "Get out of the car with your hands up." His voice was full of aggression, and I felt tension grip my entire body. Trying not to escalate the situation, I slowly opened the door, raised my hands, and stepped out. Thoughts raced through my mind. They probably don't know who I am. I'll tell them I'm a general, and everything will be fine. But looking at their faces, I knew it wouldn't work. "Officers, what's going on? I'm General James Carter of the U.S. Army. There's probably been some mistake." I tried to speak calmly to diffuse the situation, but they weren't listening. One of them, the one with short blonde hair, looked at me with disdain, smirking. "General, you're a general?" The sarcasm in his voice was insulting. "A black general in a car like this? Don't make me laugh." I felt anger start to boil inside me, but I knew I couldn't show emotion right now. I had to stay calm, but they weren't interested in listening. "If you're a general, then I'm the president," sneered the other officer, Grant, grabbing my arm and roughly pushing me against the car. I felt my body slam into the hood, pain shooting through my shoulders as they cuffed me. "Where'd you get this car, huh?" "Reed," the blonde officer, leaned down toward me with a sneer. "People like you can't have cars like this, admit it. Drugs? Or did you steal it?" I was stunned. They didn't see me as a general. To them, I was just a black man in an expensive car. In their eyes, I was already guilty simply because I didn't fit their idea of who could own such a car. "Check my documents," I rasped, feeling the rage simmering inside me. They're in the glove compartment, but they weren't listening. Reed and Grant had already made up their minds. I could see it in their faces, in their movements. They didn't want the truth. They had already created their own version of events where I was the criminal. I lay face down on the cold asphalt. My vision was still flashing with pain from the rough shove, the handcuffs cutting into my wrists. My heart was pounding in my chest. I was being pinned to the ground like a dangerous criminal. Everything inside me screamed at the injustice. I was a general. I had dedicated my life to service, yet to these people, I was nothing. They paid no attention to my words, my attempts to explain. Reed and Grant were rummaging through my car, ignoring the military documents, the ID, and the badges. They didn't want to know who I really was. To them, I was a threat, not because of what I'd done, but because of how I looked. A black man in a luxury car. That was enough for them to decide I was guilty. Damn, look at this, Reed finally muttered as he stumbled upon my documents. He froze, staring at them as if he couldn't believe his eyes. You're really a general? Grant came closer, and they exchanged glances, and I saw doubt flicker across their faces. It was the moment they began to realize what they had done. But this didn't bring me any relief. I saw the fear in their eyes and knew it would lead them to make even worse decisions. Then, a voice crackled over the radio. All patrols be advised. A U.S. Army general is on the road. Ensure his safety and assist his passage. Their faces turned pale. I saw them exchange looks, and fear crept into their eyes. Grant nervously licked his lips, and Reed seemed frozen for a moment. You heard that? Grant's voice was full of terror. We've got him pinned. We're finished if he talks. Hank stood still, his hands shaking. He looked at me, pinned to the ground and his face twisted. Damn, what have we done? He muttered. If he talks, we're done for. We'll lose our jobs, maybe even go to jail for this. I felt the anxiety rising inside me. These men were cornered, and that made them dangerous. Maybe we just let him go. Grant's voice trembled. Say it was a mistake. We got the wrong guy. Let him go. But Reed shook his head, his face tense. No. His voice was full of dread. He'll turn us in. We humiliated him. He'll crush us. Letting him go is suicide. We'll have to take him out. I saw his hand reach for his gun. When Reed reached for his weapon, I didn't have time to think. Everything happened in a flash. My survival instincts, honed over years of military service, kicked in. In one swift move, I broke free from Grant's grip, kicking his legs out from under him, causing him to lose balance and fall. Damn it, Reed yelled as I bolted behind the car, using it as cover. Bullets whizzed past my head. He was shooting, and I knew I didn't have much time. I had to act fast. My military instincts were in full gear. I drew my gun and fired back, aiming for their legs to incapacitate but not kill them. Adrenaline coursed through my veins, pushing me to react on pure reflex. Pain shot through my shoulder. One of their bullets grazed me, but I couldn't stop. Every second could be my last. I saw the fear in Reed and Grant's eyes. They were desperate, realizing they were trapped. And then, as if by fate, the screech of tires filled the air. More police cars tore onto the highway, their lights flashing in the darkness, cutting through the night. Backup had arrived. Reed and Grant froze, their faces drained of color as the new officers stepped out of their cars and quickly disarmed them. I stood there, panting, in pain and exhaustion, but alive. Weeks passed. My story spread across the news, exploding in the media. Everyone discussed how 2 police officers could attack a U.S. Army general. But for me, the bigger question was, how do I tell my family that I almost died on home soil? How do I explain that even my rank and status couldn't protect me from injustice? Official investigations were launched, uncovering a history of racist actions by Reed and Grant. It turned out they had long been known for their behavior, but had always escaped punishment. This time, they didn't get away. The court found them guilty of abuse of power and racist actions. They were sentenced to prison. For me, it was a triumph of justice, but not the end of the road. This fight was only the beginning. My story became a symbol for many who had faced similar injustices. I knew I would use my influence to fight for changes in the system that allowed people like Reed and Grant to abuse their power. Changes in the system that allowed people like Reed and Grant to abuse their power. This battle was the first, but far from the last.